What's up, Titans fans? It's your boy CD back again with another episode of Titan Up Today. Today's episode is all about the preview. We're going to preview the Tennessee Titans traveling to Cincinnati to play the Bengals in the jungle. This should be a weird game, but interesting all the same. Good. Hopefully a great game between the two of us. We got the Cincinnati Bengals who are 1-5-1, and then we are 5-1 after our loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But no need to delay. Let's get right down to it. All right, you guys. Tennessee Titans traveling to Cincinnati. We haven't had a road game in a very long time, but this road game should be an easy one. I hate to even think about that or say that out loud, but we're playing against a team that their offense is decent with a number standpoint, but their defense gives it all up. We're going to go ahead and just jump straight into this right now. The Tennessee Titans total team offense to this point, coming into week 8, we're currently 31.3 points per game on the average. That's fourth in the league. 401.3 total yards per game, which is fifth in the league. We're running 398 plays so far this season, 143 first downs, and we have a +9 turnover differential, which is first in the NFL. We've only given the ball away 3 times, which is second in the NFL. 46.6% is our third down conversion rate, which is top 10. When it comes down to fourth down, we're 3 for 4, 75%, tied for 7th place, and 304 total penalty yards to date. The Cincinnati team defense, they have 27.7 points per game scored against them, which is 21st in the league. 395.1 yards per game, 157 first downs against them. They're letting 47.7% of third down attempts be converted against them, which is 22nd in the league. 2 for 6 on fourth downs, which is tied for 4th. So hopefully we don't have to go for it on fourth down because that's actually a good statistic for them. Apart from that, 373 yards of penalties, tied for 25th, and -2 turnover differential, which is tying them for 22nd in the league, and 8 takeaways to date. Now, those 8 takeaways sound good on paper, but it's not enough to cover up all the offensive mistakes they've been making. Again, -2 turnover differential is never good for any team. For us, positive side and number 1 in the league, we should be able to take advantage of that moving forward. So our offense obviously is going to be led by our rushing game. Passing team, we can do that as well, but our rushing game is where we want to be at. This is a game where we can definitely put our workhorse to work and let him do some big work against a Cincinnati Bengals team that's not too great. So let's take a look at our rushing offense. Right now, the Tennessee Titans rushing offense has 186 attempts, which is top 10 in the league, 145.2 yards per game, 8 touchdowns, 4 explosive plays. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals rush defense, they're allowing 133.7 yards on the ground, which is 28th in the league. 4.9 yards per carry, ties them for 27th in the league. 191 attempts against them, that's 20th, with 6 touchdowns and 9 explosive runs against them. Now, this is a matchup that screams out number 22's name, Derrick Henry, King Henry. This should be a ball game for him. Right now, to this date, after seven weeks, 6 total games of football, Derrick Henry currently leads the league in carries with 143, as well as in rushing yardage, as he has 663 yards to date, currently averaging about 4.6 yards a carry, 7 touchdowns, has him tied for second in the NFL, and 2 explosive runs thus far. Looking really good so far on the run game. Now, Cincinnati Bengals, although they don't look too great on the defensive side of the ball, they do have a couple guys that we need to look out for. Geno Atkins is an old vet. We know about him. The Cincinnati Bengals definitely don't have a top-tier defense to stop the pass or the run game, but they do have a couple players that we need to be mindful of going into this matchup. I would say to you, number 56, Josh Bynes, currently has 45 tackles. 20 of those are solos, 1 sack, and 2.5 tackles for a loss. He's the linebacker that we need to be worried about whenever it comes down to blocking on that second level to allow Derrick Henry to have those big runs, 10, 15, and 20-plus yard runs down the field. I think this is definitely a big game for him, but we definitely need to worry about Josh Bynes as well going forward in this game. Next up, how about our pass offense? Let's look at those stats. So our pass offense, currently we have 204 pass attempts, tying us for 26th in the league. Again, these are just attempts, but our yardage 256.2 yards per game, is in the middle of the road. We have 18 explosives, tying us for 21st in the league, but only 8 sacks allowed to date, which is tied for second. The Cincinnati pass defense at this point is nothing to write home about. They have 261.4 yards through the air that they're allowing each game, which is 25th in the NFL. They are top 10 in the NFL with quarterback pass completions. Their percentage that they're allowing is 63.6% of attempts against their defense. They're allowing 7.3 yards per attempt, which is tied for 17th. And they've also given up 15 touchdowns through the air, tying for 25th in the league. On the interception side, they do have 7 interceptions, which is tied for top 10 in the league. 94.6 quarterback rating is 18th. They have 10 sacks, which is towards the bottom. We can't really say much because we're down there with them. But 30 explosive plays is 31st in the NFL. They're giving up a lot of explosive plays, and we have a couple players that can do some damage in the pass game. Now, I don't want you to get lulled to sleep on our pass numbers because it looks like we're just a mediocre to average passing offense, but we know that we have a stud at quarterback that can do some serious damage to a regular defense, let alone a defense like the Cincinnati Bengals. That guy who's going to do that, Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill currently, after a few games, we're almost halfway done with the season now. After 6 games, he's 112.3 quarterback rating, is 4th in the NFL. 68.5% of his passes are completed, which is 8th. 1,590 yards to date, 7.8 yards per attempt, 15 touchdowns, and only 2 interceptions on the season. Those 2 interceptions have him tied for 2nd in the NFL, and those 15 touchdowns tied for 6th in the NFL. Now, he's got to throw the ball to somebody. A.J. Brown took a little bit of time off, but he is currently our leading receiver after last week's whole takeoff through the middle for 73-yard touchdown. Launched him, catapulted him to the top of our wide receiver core statistically. Currently 32 receptions, 332 yards, 14.4 yards per reception, 4 touchdowns, and 3 explosive plays. Obviously, that huge explosive play against the Pittsburgh Steelers last week in a loss. But next up, Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith currently seems to be really quiet and from the tight ends position over the past couple weeks. Hopefully he's just getting over this ankle injury. He'll get back to full strength and do some damage this week in a game that should be relatively ripe for the picking, for him to just go out and have one of those games that he had early in the season. Currently, 20 receptions, 243 yards, 12.1 yard average, 5 touchdowns, which is still tied for 5th in the NFL. He hasn't had a touchdown in a couple weeks, and 3 explosive plays. He is still a top-tier tight end. Just needs to get healthy and do some damage out there for our offense against a Cincinnati Bengals defense that is reeling. Now, the Cincinnati Bengals, although, again, not the greatest, they still got those players. So who do they have that is going to rush Ryan Tannehill and our offensive line? Carl Lawson. Carl Lawson, the quick guy coming off the edge. Number 58 has 17 tackles. 7 of those are solo tackles. 3.5 sacks on the year. 3 tackles for a loss. And the back side, safety, is actually their leading tackler, Jesse Bates III. Jesse Bates III, 46 tackles currently on the season, 28 of those solo, 1 tackle for a loss, 8 pass deflections, has him tied for 5th in the NFL, and he does have 1 lone interception on the year as well. This team, all in all, doesn't look like they're going to be too difficult to deal with on whenever we're on offense and they're on defense. The problem is they got this young quarterback who's pretty good at having a decent season so far. The offense can score some points. Let's talk about the Cincinnati offense and our defense that's going to be stopping them, all right? So the Cincinnati offense currently putting up 23.3 points per game. Doesn't look like much, and they're tied for 23rd at this point in time. Has 361.1 yards per game, and have run 507 plays so far this season, which is actually 3rd in the NFL for plays run from scrimmage. They have 166 first downs, which is 6, which kind of vibes with the 507 plays. When you have the ball that many plays, they should be able to get a lot of first downs. But that turnover differential is still killing them. Has a -2 turnover diff, which is tied for 22nd in the league, and they have 10 giveaways, tying up for 23rd in the league. 38.8% of their third down attempts they've converted, and they are 11 for 12 on fourth down. That is crazy. 91.7%. It's almost like they're better on fourth down than they are on third down. That's actually nutty. They're second in the NFL currently with that fourth down conversion percentage. 340 penalty yards on the season, has them in the middle of the road. It's a young quarterback running this offense, but all the same, they're relatively disciplined along with the rest of the NFL. The Tennessee Titans defense still up and down, just coming off of literally a Jekyll and Hyde game. Horrible on the first half, great in the second half, and our statistics look just like that. 25.5 points per game is middle of the road. 401.8 yards per game is towards the bottom, being 25th in the NFL. 142 first downs. 61% on third down is still dead last. Again, 6 out of 10 attempts on third down are converted against our defense. We are dead last. We look so bad. Last week against the Steelers in that first half was just really bad, but 61% is not going to cut it. We need to get that number down and down quick. All right, so on fourth down, 4 out of 6. We're currently 66.7% on fourth down, tied for 20th. 307 penalty yards, which is 12th in the NFL. And that +9 turnover differential is still leading the NFL tops of all 32 teams thus far. And that's going to help whenever you have 12 takeaways, also tied for third place on the takeaway position. So defense, again, our defense up and down, and it shows because a lot of our statistical categories were just somewhere in the middle towards the bottom. We need to be more consistent. We're living by the turnover, and I'm afraid that if we don't continue to get turnovers, we might die by the turnover. What happens whenever we have a game that we don't get a turnover, or we have one giveaway and no takeaways? That's a real scary even proposition to think about. Our defense has to stop guys on third down and not so much worry about this turnover. Obviously, turnovers are good, but if we stop them on third down, it'll help us out whenever we have that game where we don't have a turnover, or we only have one turnover, or we might even lose a turnover battle altogether. So that's that from our defense. Their offense, young, a lot of speed. They are missing a huge player, which we'll talk about now, but the Cincinnati rush offense, let's take a moment and talk about that. Cincinnati rush offense, 185 total attempts so far in the year, which is actually towards the top. Again, they've run a ton of plays, so they should be towards the top in running the ball. They are currently 11th on rushing attempts. 98.9 yards per game, has them 26. So all those attempts that they're running doesn't appear to be very efficient at all. So 7 touchdowns on the ground ties them for 16th, puts them in the middle of the pack of the NFL, and only 5 explosive runs. But that's tied for 9th in the NFL top 10, never hurt anybody. The Tennessee Titans rush defense, we're giving up 129.8 yards per game, 4.9 yards per carry, tying us for 27th in the NFL. 160 attempts against us, which is 11th least so far this season. 5 touchdowns on the ground is tied for 7th, and 6 explosive plays on the ground is tied for 22nd, which is not that great by any means. But although there is work to be done, we've seen whenever we want to step up against a run, we can do that. We've done it against Houston. We've done it a ton of times on the goal line or in 4th down and inches or 3rd down and inches. We seem to really bow up and play well in those short situations. We just need to put that together on an entire game against the run so we can get that average down, get that yardage number down, and let's be overall, get the defense looking like it should be, what we expect from it, that Vrabel run defense moving on. But again, this is about Cincinnati's offense right now, specifically them on the ground. Usually that guy that's going to be running on the ground is Joe Mixon. Look at that stat line. 119 carries, ties up for 3rd, 428 yards, a mere 3.6 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns and 3 explosives, which ties him for 7th in the league. But the problem is he's out. He's not playing this week. He's injured. He will not be on the field. So who are they going to bring in? The old crusty vet, Giovanni Bernard's been in a while in the league, coming out of North Carolina. Currently 25 carries on the season, 81 yards. That's 3.2 yards per carry, 1 touchdown, no explosive. He's always been more of a 3rd down, scat back type, but catching the ball out of the backfield. Joe Mixon is the pounder, the guy who's more of a 3-down back, but Gio spells him from time to time. Now he gets the keys to this car. I mean, it's a crusty Buick or Pontiac or something like that, but he's got the keys. He's going to get all the carries. Expect him to do the best that he can to help out Joe Burrow, but he's really good in the pass blocking schemes from the running back position. But I think that our defense has an opportunity to hold down the Bengals run game this week and help our statistics move up a little bit on the board for the NFL. But who we're going to stop them with? Our middle linebacker and core, which I would say is one of the top in the NFL. Jayon Brown, number 55, athletic, all over the place. 43 tackles so far this season. 25 of those are solos. Still no sacks. 3 tackles for a loss. 6 pass deflections, as he is a cover linebacker as well. And 1 interception that we got last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers as we turned over Ben Roethlisberger 3 times. Now, the next middle linebacker for us, Rashaan Evans. If he's not out there punching guys and getting ejected, he's out there making tackles. Currently 35 tackles on the season. 23 of those are solos and only 1 pass deflection or pass defend at this point in time. But he plays a little bit of everything. I think that we should be able to stop the run without any issues this week. Now, the Cincinnati pass offense with Joe Burrow, let's see what those stats look like. All right, so as you can see, their pass offense currently thrown 294 attempts, which is 3rd in the NFL. 262.3 yards per game is 12th. 18 explosive pass plays, which is tied for 21st. And they are allowing 28 sacks this year, which is last in the NFL. The Tennessee Titans, currently giving up 272 yards per game, is 26th in the NFL. A lot of yards that we're giving up. 66% of pass attempts are completed against us, which puts us in the middle of the road. We're giving up 6.9 yards per attempt in the pass game. 15 touchdowns, which ties us for 25th in the NFL. 9 interceptions is second or tied for second currently in the NFL. And the quarterback is getting a 92.0 quarterback rating, which is 13th in the NFL. 7 sacks, which is way, way towards the bottom, tied for 30th in the NFL. 17 explosive plays, ties us for 5th. Joe Burrow is the guy, rookie quarterback, again, doing as well as he can with what he has. The statistics, he's just throwing the ball a ton. The numbers are right there. He's currently 89.4 quarterback rating, which is not that great. 66.6% of his passes are completed. 2,000 yards already this early in the season. He's thrown for 23, which is 4th in the NFL. 6.9 yards per attempt. 9 touchdowns, which is tied him for 9th currently. And 5 interceptions. Rookie mistakes are going to happen, but they've only played 7 games. He's thrown 5 picks. Let's see if we can at least get 1 of those this week. Now, who's going to throw the ball to? A.J. Green? Nope. A.J. Green's nowhere to be found so far. Their number 1 receiver, statistically speaking, is Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd, number 83, is currently 48 receptions, tied for 4th in the NFL. He's got 517 yards, 10.8 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns, and 4 explosive plays. He's looking like a top wide receiver. He's doing all right so far, getting open, and definitely Joe Burrow is finding him and getting him the ball consistently. His number 2 option is not A.J. Green, it's T. Higgins. T. Higgins has 27 receptions, 410 yards, 15.2 yards per catch, 3 touchdowns, and 6 explosive plays. They do have the ability to get down the field. T. Higgins appears to be that speedster that's going to be hurting us if we do not stay patient and disciplined. Malcolm Butler, it's mostly for you, but we have some other options. We have to get to Joe Burrow. They've given up the most sacks in the NFL. Harold Landry. Harold Landry right now is our leader when it comes down to the front line. 26 tackles, 20 solos, 1.5 sacks. We're not sacking many guys. This has to be the game where we can close down and take down a quarterback. I'm thinking that we draw up some good defense and we do some real damage, causing confusion, control chaos coming at Joe Burrow. But let me finish. 4.5 tackles for a loss currently for Harold Landry, and that 1 interception as well. Speaking of interceptions, our interception leader, Malcolm Butler in the backside, number 21, has 41 tackles. 37 of those are solos, No sacks, 1 tackle for a loss, 7 pass deflections, still tied for 8th in the league. 2 interceptions, also ties up for 8th in the league. We're doing some great things. Malcolm Butler, keep up the good work. But I like to see our safety step up. This is Kevin Byard's been so ghost. I just like to see you get the interceptions that time. Speaking of secondary, though, Adoree Jackson practiced all week except for today, Friday. He did not practice. They had not come out to say if he was sat because of his injury of a setback or if it was just to give him a little bit of rest. Currently, he's still on the IR. They have not brought him back off the IR, so we can expect him not to play this week. But just keep that in mind. The future is closer than we can expect. We'll have all 4 of our starting secondary back here shortly to make this long run down the stretch to the playoffs and maybe even more onto the Super Bowl. But that's defense. We talked about offense, passing the ball, running the ball, how we're going to stop them, how we're going to beat them. But how about we just tie the game? Man, it was 27-24. Special teams. All right, so special teams, 10 for 16 on field goals made at 62.5%. Currently still last in the NFL. 44.2 net average on punts. This is 13th. 10 of those punts have been inside the 20, which is tied for 10th. And we're averaging 17.4 yards on kickoff returns, which is still towards the bottom at 30th in the NFL. 7.4 yards on punt returns brings us up towards the middle of the pack. The Bengals, on the other hand, 17 for 19 kicking field goals. Currently, 89.5% of them are made. 46.1 punt return net average is 6th in the NFL. 7 of those punts inside the 20. 23.9 yards on kickoff returns. More than 20 yards is like blowing my mind. I haven't seen anything like that from us all season, but that puts them in the top 10. And on punt returns, they're 12th in the NFL, currently with 9.3 yards per punt return. So to wrap this whole thing up, we're looking at a young team with a young coach in the Cincinnati Bengals that's trying to just make something and grow week in and week out. They're missing, I would argue, their best offensive weapon in Joe Mixon this week. Their offensive line is in shambles, giving up a lot of sacks. A.J. Brown is a shell of his old self. Their defense has not been playing well. This lines up to be the Tennessee Titans walking through this team. Now, these are NFL players. I don't care who they are on a bad day. They can have a good day and they can come out and play. Because they're NFL players and they're competing, they're athletes, we have to show these guys some respect. I like to see a great game plan coming out of this disappointing Pittsburgh Steelers loss. Put together a great game plan, run the ball, control the clock, show some exotic looks to Joe, and make sure that he is on the ground. The man can run. He's actually their number 2 rusher on the season. He can run the ball. He's athletic. Make sure that we're smart. Defensively, nobody gets behind us. Don't get out coached. Play smart on third downs. We should be able to control this game. We're talking about a complete blowout. It should be, but let's not look past it because we should have blown out the Broncos. We should have blown out the Jags. We should have blown out the Texans. And we seem to be playing down or up to our competition. This is not the week to do that because we do not want to see any kind of upset at all. But nonetheless, this wraps up the preview for the Cincinnati Bengals playing against the Tennessee Titans this week in Week 8. I appreciate you guys joining me again. Join me tomorrow as I bring you guys the game predictions. It'll be Saturday. Give you all the game predictions for every single game, including the Sunday night and Monday night games for this week. Now, if you like this episode or any other episode in the past, click the like button. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Click that notifications bell as well. Get notified whenever I upload tomorrow's episode. And I got one question before you leave. Why tighten up tomorrow when you can tighten up today?